The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched impossibly high, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell stood at the human podium, her hands gripping the edges as she faced the assembled representatives of 47 species. Above her, the Cravathi Emperor's hologram loomed, his forearms crossed in obvious displeasure. To her left, the Xinthian Collective's speaker, pulsed with colors that she had learned meant contempt. The Void Collective has destroyed 17 systems in 3 months, the Cravathi Emperor's voice boomed through the chamber. They move like a plague across our territories. The Council requires immediate action from all member species. Sarah straightened her spine. Earth stands ready to assist. Our fleets can be mobilized within your fleets? The Xinthian's colors shifted to what could only be described as mockery. Ambassador, your species has been part of this council for 50 years. Yet you barely maintain 300 vessels. The Cravathi alone field 30,000 warships. Quality over quantity, Sarah began, but the Emperor cut her off with a dismissive gesture. Humans are soft worlders. You feel too much, think too slowly, and your technology is centuries behind our own. What we require from Earth is simple. Your mining operations in the Outer Rim must increase output by 300%. We need raw materials for real warships, built by real powers. The chamber filled with sounds that Sarah had learned to recognize, the Cravathi clicking approval, the Xinthians humming agreement, the Vextari chittering what passed for their laughter. She felt her face flush with anger and shame. 50 years since first contact, and humanity was still treated like children playing at galactic politics. Earth will consider the Council's request, she said through clenched teeth, the formal words tasting like ash in her mouth. In the observation gallery high above the chamber floor, Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the proceedings through narrowed eyes. Her uniform, crisp and decorated with more medals than most alien species awarded in a lifetime, seemed pointless now. She had fought in the border wars, had defended human colonies against raiders, had earned every commendation on her chest, and still, they saw Earth as nothing more than a resource depot. Beside her stood Colonel James Park, head of Earth's Strategic Defense Intelligence. His face remained carefully neutral, but Elena knew him well enough to see the anger simmering beneath. They have no idea, James whispered, leaning close so only she could hear. No, Elena agreed. They don't. The session continued for another hour with species after species pledging their fleets and forces. The numbers were staggering. The Cravathi Empire would send 15,000 warships. The Xinthian Collective would deploy their planet-killer dreadnoughts. Even minor powers like the Trell Confederation promised thousands of vessels. Earth's offer of 300 ships wasn't even recorded in the official count. When the session finally ended, Sarah made her way through the corridors of the station to the human delegation's quarters. Elena and James were already there, along with General Marcus Thompson, who commanded Earth's actual military forces, the ones the Council knew about. That was humiliating, Sarah said, pouring herself a drink with shaking hands. 50 years, and they still treat us like we're primitives who stumbled into space by accident. Let them think that, General Thompson said. His weathered face showed no emotion. It's been working in our favor. Sarah turned to look at him. Working in our favor? Marcus, they just told the entire galaxy that humans are useless. Good. The general stood and walked to the window, looking out at the massive space station that served as the Council's headquarters. The Cravathi believe in overwhelming force. The Xinthians trust in superior technology. Every major power in this galaxy fights the same way. Big fleets, rigid formations, predictable tactics. And? Sarah asked. Elena smiled, a predator's expression. And nobody's paying attention to what Earth has really been building. James pulled up a holographic display. It showed a sector of space far from Earth, deep in the Outer Rim territories where human mining operations supposedly worked in isolation. For the past 20 years, while the Council dismissed us, we've been running a different kind of program. Not bigger ships or better weapons. We already knew we'd never match the elder races in those areas. The hologram shifted, showing sleek vessels that looked nothing like Earth's official fleet. They were smaller, faster, with aggressive lines that suggested speed and maneuverability rather than firepower. Project Phantom, General Thompson said. Special operations warfare on a galactic scale. While the Council builds larger and larger ships, We've been training crews in guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, everything humanity learned from thousands of years of conflict on Earth. Sarah stared at the display. How many ships? Classified, James said. But enough. More importantly, they're crewed by people who think differently than any alien species in the Council. The Kravathi are warriors, but they're predictable warriors. The Xinthians have superior computing power, but they're logical to a fault. Humans, he smiled. Humans are creative, reckless, unpredictable. We don't follow the rules because we're too ignorant. We break them because we see possibilities others don't. Elena crossed her arms. I've been reviewing reports from the Phantom Squadron's training exercises. They've run simulations against Kravathi battle groups, Xinthian dreadnoughts, every major fleet configuration in the galaxy. Win rate is 87%. Simulations, Sarah said weakly. The real Void Collective is destroying actual worlds, which is why the squadron is already deployed, General Thompson said quietly. They've been in the field for 6 weeks, operating in the shadow zones where the Void Collective has been spotted. We just haven't told the Council yet. The room fell silent. Sarah understood the implications immediately. If the squadron succeeded, humanity would finally have proof of their worth. If they failed, Earth would be blamed for acting without authorization, possibly expelled from the Council entirely. You're gambling everything, she said. Yes, Elena agreed, but it's a gamble worth taking. Because the truth is, Ambassador, the Council doesn't just underestimate humans, they fundamentally misunderstand us. They think emotion is weakness. We know it's what makes us strong. They think our inability to match their technology is a failing. We see it as motivation to be smarter, faster, more creative, James added. The Void Collective is winning because they fight differently than the Council expects. But humans, we've been fighting differently our entire history. It's what we do best. Sarah looked at each of them, these warriors and strategists who had been planning this moment for decades. And if the squadron encounters the Void Collective before the Council authorizes engagement? General Thompson's expression hardened. Then Commander Chen has orders to do what humans do best, improvise, adapt, and show the galaxy what they've been missing. Outside the window, stars glittered in the endless dark. Somewhere among them, the Phantom Squadron was already moving, already hunting, already preparing to rewrite everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. The Council had spent 50 years dismissing Earth's potential. That mistake was about to cost them their certainty, and possibly save their lives. Admiral Vasquez raised her glass. To the Phantom Squadron, may they teach the galaxy that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the biggest gun or the fastest computer, it's a human with something to prove. The others raised their glasses in silent agreement. The game had been in motion for years. Now finally, the galaxy was about to learn the rules had changed. The darkness between stars held secrets that most species preferred to ignore. In the empty spaces where gravity thinned and light faded to memory, the Phantom Squadron waited like ghosts in the black. Commander Marcus Chen floated in the zero-gravity combat information center of his ship, the Shadow Strike, watching holographic displays paint pictures of the void around them. Contact, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka called out from the sensor station. 27 vessels, unknown configuration. They just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Helio system. Marcus pulled himself to the tactical display, his movements practiced and efficient in the weightlessness. The ships appeared as red markers on the screen, their signatures unlike anything in the Council's databases. They moved in perfect formation, too perfect, as if controlled by a single mind. That's them, he said quietly. The Void Collective. Around the combat center, his crew reacted with the calm professionalism of people who had trained together for 5 years. No panic, no fear, just focus. Captain Rebecca Reaper Rodriguez checked her flight suit connections from the pilot station. Engineer Kamala Singh ran her fingers across her console, already plotting power distribution scenarios. They were ready. Sir, they're scanning the system, Yuki reported. 3 populated stations, maybe 50,000 inhabitants total. Mining operations mostly. Marcus studied the enemy formation. 27 ships to his squadron's 8. Each Void vessel was larger, better armed according to the energy signatures. By every conventional measure, the smart move was to retreat. to call for council reinforcements to follow standard procedure. Marcus Chen didn't believe in standard procedure. All ships. This is Shadow Lead, he broadcast on the encrypted channel. Hold position. Silent running protocol. Let them come to us. The squadron ships powered down to minimum levels, becoming nearly invisible against the background radiation of space. They drifted among the asteroids of the system's outer belt. Just another collection of rocks and ice. The Void Collective's vessels continued forward, heading toward the inner system and the stations full of people who had no idea death was approaching. They're accelerating, Yuki said. They'll reach the first station in 40 minutes. Rebecca twisted in her seat to look at Marcus. Commander, if we're going to do this, we need to commit soon. Once they're among the stations, collateral damage becomes a problem. Marcus nodded slowly. He had read every report from the destroyed systems, studied every scrap of data about the Void Collective. They were methodical, thorough, and completely without mercy. They didn't negotiate, didn't communicate, didn't show any behavior that suggested individual thought. The xenopsychology experts thought they might be a hive mind, but nobody knew for sure. Kamala, can you give me a concentrated EM burst on my mark? Marcus asked. The engineer's hands flew across her console. Directional electromagnetic pulse, yes. 90% power to forward emitters. It'll blind our sensors for 30 seconds, but theirs too. Good. Reaper, I need you to do something crazy when I give the word. Rebecca grinned, her teeth white against her dark skin. Commander, you say that like there's any other way to fly. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The council thought humans were reckless, too emotional, too unpredictable to be effective warriors. They had no idea that those traits were exactly what made Project Phantom possible. Every species in the galaxy had better technology, stronger ships, more firepower. But none of them could think like humans. None of them could look at a battle and see possibilities instead of procedures. All ships, weapons hot, Marcus ordered. But nobody fires until I do. We're going to play dead, then we're going to play dirty. The squadron powered up their weapon systems while maintaining radio silence. On the tactical display, the Void Collective's ships continued their approach, unaware that 8 human vessels watched and waited. They're within range, Yuki said. Still no indication they've detected us. Marcus watched the distance counter tick down. His heart beat steady in his chest, adrenaline sharpening his thoughts rather than clouding them. This was what humans had been doing for thousands of years. Finding ways to win when they shouldn't, surviving when the odds said they'd die, adapting faster than anyone expected. Kamala, EM pulse now. A wave of electromagnetic energy exploded from the shadow strike, cascading across the asteroid field and slamming into the Void Collective's sensors. For 30 seconds, both sides were blind. Reaper, execute maneuver Alpha 7. Yes, sir. Rebecca's hands danced across her controls. The shadow strike's engines roared to life, sending the ship hurtling straight toward the Void formation at an angle that no sane pilot would choose. Behind them, the rest of the squadron scattered in seemingly random directions, their movements chaotic and unpredictable. The 30 seconds ended. Sensors came back online. The Void Collective's ships found themselves in the middle of a maelstrom. The shadow strike was accelerating directly at their flagship, too close to be intercepted and on a collision course. The other Phantom ships had positioned themselves at wild angles, some diving below the plane of battle, others climbing above, one even appearing to flee at high speed. They're confused, Yuki said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. Their formation is breaking. They don't know which threat to address first. Fire, Marcus ordered. The shadow strike's railgun spoke, sending tungsten rods tearing through space at relativistic speeds. At this range, there was no time to dodge. The Void flagship's shields flared and collapsed. The rods punched through armor like paper. Then, at the last possible second, Rebecca spun the ship on its axis and fired the main engines at full burn, throwing everyone against their restraints as the shadow strike curved away from the collision at impossible speed. The rest of the squadron opened fire from their scattered positions. They didn't aim for kills. Marcus had been specific about that. They targeted sensor arrays, communication dishes, engine clusters. They wanted chaos, confusion, fear, if the Void Collective could feel fear. Enemy vessels attempting to regroup, Yuki reported. 3 ships moving to defensive positions around the flagship. The others they're hesitating. Marcus saw it too. The void ships weren't pursuing with the mechanical efficiency they'd shown in previous encounters. They were pausing, reassessing, trying to understand what was happening. Whatever intelligence controlled them had never faced an enemy that fought like this. All ships, pattern Delta, Marcus ordered. Make them think we're everywhere. The squadron scattered again, this time using the asteroid field for cover. They popped out at random intervals, fired a few shots, then disappeared behind rocks and ice. They broadcast false sensor signatures, making 8 ships look like 80. They played recorded battle chatter on open channels, making it sound like a massive fleet was coordinating an attack. It was psychological warfare on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The Council species fought with honor, with rigid tactics, with predictable strategies. Humans fought to win, and they didn't care how messy it got. "Commander, they're retreating," Yuki said, disbelief clear in her voice. "The Void Collective is withdrawing from the system." Marcus watched the tactical display as the enemy ships began to pull back, their formation ragged and uncertain. They had come here expecting easy prey, expecting targets that would fight back in predictable ways. Instead, they had found something that made no sense to their collective intelligence, an enemy that broke every rule, that seemed to be in a dozen places at once, that turned space itself into a weapon. "Let them go," Marcus ordered, "but tag them. I want to know where they run to." Rebecca let out a whoop of joy that echoed through the combat center. "We did it. 8 ships against 27, and we sent them running." Kamala was laughing, tears streaming down her face in the zero gravity. Even Yuki allowed herself a smile, her usual stoic expression cracking. Marcus felt the weight lift from his shoulders, but only slightly. They had won this battle, yes. They had saved 50,000 lives and proven that human tactics could work against the Void Collective. But he knew this was just the beginning. "All ships, secure from battle stations," he ordered. "Damage reports?" The reports came in one by one. Minor damage to 2 ships. 1 injured crew member with a broken arm from the high-G maneuvers. Against 27 enemy vessels, they had achieved the impossible with barely a scratch. "Send a coded burst to Earth Command," Marcus said. "Let them know we've made contact and achieved first victory. Include all tactical data." "Yes, sir," Yuki replied. Marcus stared at the spot where the Void Collective had been. They would analyze this defeat, would try to adapt, would come back stronger, but that was fine. Because humans would adapt too, would find new ways to fight, new tactics to deploy. The Council thought humanity was too emotional, too chaotic, too unpredictable to be effective warriors. They were right about the chaos and unpredictability. They were dead wrong about the effectiveness. "Good work, everyone," Marcus said. "But this is just the start. The real fight is still coming." The Cravathi homeworld of Kravos burned beneath a sky filled with death. Emperor Thrax stood on the command platform of the Planetary Defense Center, watching his fleet die in the void above. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers against the darkness, each one marking the end of a warship and thousands of lives. "Status," he demanded, his forearms gripping the railing hard enough to dent the metal. "We've lost 60% of our forces," the tactical officer reported, his voice hollow with shock. "The Void Collective has breached our outer defensive line. They're moving toward orbital bombardment positions." Thrax felt something he had not experienced in his 300 years of life: helplessness. The Cravathi Empire had ruled this sector for millennia. Their military doctrine had been refined across countless wars. They had never lost a battle at their homeworld, until today. "Where are the Council reinforcements?" he asked. "The Zynthian fleet encountered void forces at the Praxis Gate. They're engaged and cannot break free. The Trell are still 6 hours out. The Vextari," the officer hesitated. "The Vextari fleet was destroyed en route." Thrax's secondary arms clenched into fists. Across the galaxy, the same story was repeating. The Void Collective had launched simultaneous attacks on a dozen major worlds. The Council's fleets, designed to overwhelm through superior numbers and firepower, were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought with perfect coordination and no fear of death. "What about the humans?" someone asked from behind him. Thrax turned to see his military advisor, General Kreth. The question hung in the air like an insult. Humans, the soft-worlders, the species that could barely field a few hundred ships, the ones the Council had dismissed as irrelevant. "What about them?" Thrax growled. "They have forces in the region. Irregular units. The Council authorized their deployment as a last resort. You mean the suicide mission we assigned them? Thrax shook his head. Even if they wanted to help, their 300 ships would be vapor against what's out there. Sir, we have incoming vessels, the sensor operator called out. Unknown signatures, small craft moving at high speed from the outer system. On the main display, new markers appeared. 8 ships, tiny compared to the Void Collective's massive fleet. They were heading straight for the battle, accelerating far beyond what Cravathi vessels could safely achieve. Are those the humans? Kreth asked. If they are, they're insane, Thrax said. They'll be destroyed in minutes. But the human ships didn't slow down. They didn't form defensive positions. They dove into the battle like predators who had spotted prey, their movements erratic and unpredictable. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, reappearing on the other side of the void formation. What are they doing? The tactical officer whispered. Thrax leaned forward, watching in fascination as the human vessels began their attack. They weren't targeting the void ships directly. They were hitting communication nodes, jamming signals, creating interference patterns that disrupted the enemy's perfect coordination. It was like watching someone attack a body's nervous system instead of its muscles. Clever, he admitted grudgingly. On the Shadow Strike, Marcus Chen coordinated his squadron with the calm precision of someone conducting a symphony of destruction. They had arrived to find the Cravathi forces on the verge of collapse, exactly as Earth Command had predicted. The Council's traditional tactics were failing spectacularly. Time to show them something new. Reaper, I need you to thread the needle between those 2 capital ships, Marcus ordered. Kamala, prepare debris package 7. You want me to fly between 2 void dreadnoughts that are actively shooting at each other? Rebecca asked. Her tone suggested the idea was perfectly reasonable. Yes. Outstanding. The Shadow Strike rolled and dove, its small size allowing maneuvers that would tear a larger ship apart. Rebecca's hands moved with practiced grace, her mind calculating angles and vectors faster than any computer. She lived for moments like this when physics and skill and pure human audacity combined into something beautiful and terrible. They screamed between the 2 dreadnoughts with meters to spare. Behind them, Kamala released the debris package, thousands of small reflective objects that scattered in their wake, each one designed to look like a ship on sensors. The Void Collective's targeting systems went haywire. Suddenly, from their perspective, one human ship had become 1,000. Their weapons fired at ghosts while the real target was already gone. That's our cue, Marcus announced. All ships execute disruption pattern Omega. Make them confused. Make them scared. Make them forget how to work together. The squadron split apart, each ship broadcasting different signals, creating false sensor readings, firing on seemingly random targets. They didn't try to match the Void Collective's firepower. They couldn't. Instead, they attacked the one thing the enemy relied on, their perfect coordination. Ships that had moved as one began hesitating. Communication channels that had been silent except for tactical data burst with noise. Human voices shouting, music playing, recordings of battle sounds from 100 different engagements. It was chaos weaponized, confusion turned into a military strategy, and it was working. The void ships are breaking formation, Yuki reported, her voice tight with excitement. They're trying to regroup, but they can't coordinate with all the interference we're generating. Marcus allowed himself a tight smile. The Council's species would never think to fight this way. They valued honor, direct confrontation, technological superiority. Humans valued winning, and they had learned long ago that the best way to beat a stronger enemy was to make them fight on your terms, not theirs. Commander, the Cravathi defense platforms are getting a lock on the Void command ship, Yuki said, but they need 30 seconds of clear targeting. 30 seconds was an eternity in space combat. The Void Collective would adapt, would counter, would destroy the defense platforms before they could fire, unless someone gave them something else to think about. Reaper, plot a course to the Void command ship. Full burn. Rebecca's hands paused over her controls. Sir, that's a suicide run. Even if we survive the approach, we won't be able to break away in time. I know, Marcus said quietly, but we need to give the Cravathi their shot. Kamala, transfer all power to forward shields. Yuki, broadcast on all frequencies. I want the Void Collective to know we're coming. The crew exchanged glances. They knew what Marcus was asking. They knew the odds. But not one of them hesitated. Shadow strike to all Cravathi forces, Marcus announced on open channels. You're about to get your 30 seconds. Don't waste them. The Shadow Strike accelerated toward the Void command ship, its engines burning bright enough to light up the battle. Every Void vessel in range turned their weapons toward this single human ship that dared to approach their flagship. Energy beams and missiles converged on their position. Shields at 40%, Kamala reported. 30%, 25%. Rebecca flew like a woman possessed, dodging, weaving, using every trick she had learned in 5 years of training. The Shadow Strike took hit after hit, but it kept coming. Kept drawing fire, kept demanding attention. 10 seconds to impact, Yuki counted down. 9, 8. Shields failing, Kamala warned. 6, 5. Marcus gripped his seat. If this didn't work, if the Cravathi missed their shot, then he had just killed his crew for nothing. 3, 2. The universe lit up as the Cravathi defense platforms fired as one. A massive beam of concentrated energy lanced across space, punching through the Void command ship's shields like they weren't there. The enemy vessel exploded in a brilliant flash that momentarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. "Reaper now," Marcus shouted. Rebecca hauled on the controls, spinning the Shadow Strike in a maneuver that exceeded every safety limit. The ship groaned. Alarms screamed, but they curved away from the explosion, surfing the shockwave to safety. The crew sat in stunned silence for a moment, then erupted in cheers. "We're alive," Kamala said, sounding surprised. "Barely," Yuki added, checking her console. "But the Void forces are in disarray. Losing their command ship has disrupted their coordination." Marcus pulled up the tactical display. The Void Collective's perfect formation had collapsed. Ships were retreating in clusters, their movements uncertain and confused. The Cravathi forces were rallying, pressing the advantage. "All human ships reform on me," Marcus ordered. "Let's help them push these bastards back." On the planet below, Emperor Thrax watched as the tide of battle shifted. The humans had done the impossible. 8 ships had changed the course of an engagement involving thousands. They hadn't won through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won through tactics that no Cravathi commander would have ever considered. "Open a channel to the human commander," Thrax ordered. A moment later, a human face appeared on the screen. Young, determined, with eyes that had seen too much combat. Commander Marcus Chen. "Human," Thrax said. "You saved my world. You saved my people. The Cravathi Empire is in your debt." Marcus's expression remained neutral. "We did what needed to be done, Emperor. The Void Collective is everyone's enemy." "Yes," Thrax agreed. "But not everyone would have risked their lives for a species that has shown them only contempt." He paused, then added, "The Council underestimated your kind." "I underestimated your kind. That was a mistake I will not make again." Marcus nodded. "The fight isn't over, Emperor. This was just one battle." "Indeed, but it was the battle that changed everything." Thrax straightened to his full height. "Commander Chen, I am formally requesting that human forces be elevated to primary combat status. Your tactics, your methods, they work where ours fail." "I'll pass that along to Earth Command," Marcus said. "In the meantime, we have a galaxy to save." The transmission ended. Marcus looked at his crew, seeing the exhaustion and pride in their faces. They had proven something today, something that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't weak. They were just fighting a different kind of war. And they were very, very good at it. The Shadow Strike limped through space, trailing plasma from a dozen breaches in its hull. Warning lights painted the Combat Information Center red, and the smell of burned electronics filled the air. Marcus Chen watched his tactical display through eyes heavy with exhaustion. They had been fighting continuously for 3 days, jumping from battle to battle across Council space. They were winning, but the cost was becoming unbearable. "Casualty report," Marcus said, his voice rough. Yuki's hands trembled slightly as she pulled up the data. "Phantom 7 is gone. All hands lost. Phantom 3 took critical damage during the Sarthos engagement. They made it to a repair station, but they're out of the fight. Phantom 5 lost their commander and half their crew." Marcus closed his eyes. 8 ships had started this campaign. Now they were down to 5 operational vessels, and every one of those was damaged. He thought of Commander Sarah Okonkwo, who had led Phantom 7. She had been joking about retirement just last week. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Vasquez," Kamala reported. Elena Vasquez's face appeared on the screen, her expression grave. Behind her, Marcus could see the chaos of Earth Command's war room. "Commander, The Council has officially requested human tactical support for Operation Spearpoint. They want Phantom Squadron to lead the assault on the Void Collective's main staging area. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. With 5 damaged ships. The Council is adapting your tactics across their fleets, Elena said. Initial results are promising, but they need someone who knows how to coordinate irregular warfare at scale. They need you, Marcus. Admiral, my people are exhausted. We've been fighting nonstop for 72 hours. Half my squadron is gone. Elena's expression softened. I know, and if I could, I'd pull you out right now. But the Council's combined fleet is gathering at the nexus point. If we hit the Void staging area hard enough, we might end this war. But only if we hit them the right way. The human way. Marcus looked around his combat center. Rebecca sat slumped in her pilot seat, dark circles under her eyes. Kamala had a bandage wrapped around her head from a console explosion during their last engagement. Yuki was running on stimulants and stubborn determination. They were all running on empty, but they were also the only ones who could do this. We'll be there, Marcus said. But Admiral, I need reinforcements, real ones. If we're going to lead this assault, I need ships that can keep up with our tactics. Elena nodded. Already approved. The Council has authorized formation of mixed species units under human command. You'll have volunteers from every major fleet, pilots willing to learn your methods, commanders willing to follow your orders. Can we trust them? The Kravathi Emperor personally vouched for his pilots. The Zynthians are sending their best tactical minds. Even species that insulted us 6 months ago are begging to be part of this. Elena leaned forward. You changed the game, Marcus. Now everyone wants to play by human rules. After the transmission ended, Marcus gathered his remaining commanders for a virtual conference. Their faces appeared on his screen. Tired, battered, but unbroken. We've been asked to lead the final assault, he told them. Council forces will be there, but we'll be coordinating tactics. Teaching them how to fight like we do. Commander Takeshi Yamamoto of Phantom II shook his head. With respect, sir, our people need rest. We're making mistakes, taking risks we wouldn't normally take. I know, Marcus said, but if we don't finish this now, the Void Collective will adapt to our tactics. They're already learning. Every engagement gets harder. Then we go, Rebecca said firmly. She looked terrible, but her voice carried absolute certainty. We started this. We finish it. The others nodded one by one. It was insane. It was probably suicide. But they were human, and humans had been doing insane, probably suicidal things for their entire history. It was practically their defining characteristic. 3 days later, the largest fleet ever assembled by the Galactic Council gathered at the nexus point. Thousands of ships from dozens of species, all preparing for the assault that would either end the war or doom them all. And at the center of it all, 5 battered human vessels that barely qualified as a squadron. Marcus stood before the fleet commanders in a virtual conference that included every major power in the Council. The Kravathi Emperor was there. The Zynthian Collective had sent 3 representatives. Even minor species that had never spoken directly to humans before attended. The Void Collective has been operating from a massive station in the Abyss sector, Marcus began, pulling up tactical displays. Our intelligence suggests this is their central coordination hub. Take it out, and their forces across the galaxy lose cohesion. We should overwhelm them with force, a Kravathi admiral suggested. Mass our fleets and strike with everything we have. No, Marcus said firmly. That's exactly what they expect. The Void Collective is a hive mind. They think in terms of efficiency and logic. A direct assault would be anticipated and countered. Then what do you suggest, human? The Zynthian speaker pulsed with colors Marcus now recognized as curiosity. We do what we've been doing. We create chaos. We hit them from unexpected angles. We make them react instead of act. But this time we do it with thousands of ships instead of 8. Marcus outlined his plan. It was complex, requiring precise timing and the kind of coordinated improvisation that went against everything the Council's military doctrine taught. Ships would attack from random vectors. False signals would create phantom fleets. Psychological warfare would play constantly on all frequencies. The goal wasn't just to destroy the station. It was to shatter the Void Collective's ability to coordinate its forces across the galaxy. This is madness, someone objected. Yes, Marcus agreed. Human madness, but it works. Emperor Thrax rose from his seat. The commander speaks truth. I have seen human tactics in action. They appear chaotic, but there is method in the madness. I trust Commander Chen with my forces. Who else will follow? One by one, the fleet commanders agreed. Some with enthusiasm, others with reluctance, but all with respect. The humans had earned that much. The assault began 12 hours later. Marcus coordinated from the Shadow Strike, his damaged ship serving as a mobile command center. Around him, thousands of vessels executed the most unconventional attack in galactic history. Kravati battleships abandoned their traditional formations to strike from unexpected angles. Xinthian dreadnoughts used their superior sensors not for direct targeting, but for creating elaborate false images. Trell cruisers that had always fought with disciplined precision suddenly became unpredictable, creative, dangerous. The Void Collective's station was massive, a structure that dwarfed entire planets. But size meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight fair. All units execute Pattern Chaos 7, Marcus ordered. Make them see threats everywhere. Make them believe we're 10 times our actual number. The fleet scattered in what looked like complete disorder but was actually carefully orchestrated mayhem. Ships appeared and disappeared from sensors. False signals suggested attacks that never came. Real attacks came from directions the Void never anticipated. They're adapting, Yuki reported. The Void forces are trying to counter our tactics. Of course they are, Marcus said. They're learning. But we're human. We've had millions of years to perfect the art of creative violence. They've had weeks. The battle raged for hours. The Shadow Strike took more hits, systems failing one by one. Around the galaxy, the Void Collective's coordinated attacks began to falter as their central hub struggled to maintain control. Then Marcus saw his opening. All ships, converge on these coordinates, he transmitted. Every weapon, every missile, every bit of firepower you have. We're going to punch through their shields and take out the station's core. Commander, that requires flying through their defensive fire, the Kravati Admiral warned. We'll take heavy losses. I know, Marcus said quietly. Shadow Strike will lead. Follow our path. Rebecca looked at him, understanding in her eyes. Sir, our shields are already down to 12%. We won't survive this run. I know, Marcus repeated, but we'll give everyone else a path through. That's enough. The crew of the Shadow Strike didn't argue. They had known from the beginning that their mission might require this. They had made their peace with it. It's been an honor, Kamala said softly. The honor was mine, Marcus replied. Reaper, take us in. The Shadow Strike accelerated toward the Void Station, drawing fire from every defensive platform. Behind them, the combined fleet followed, using the human ship as a shield and a guide. Energy beams tore into the Shadow Strike's hull. Explosions ripped through compartments. But they kept going, kept broadcasting the path, kept showing the way. Shields gone, Kamala reported. Hull breaches on all decks. We're venting atmosphere. Keep going, Marcus ordered. They were within range of the station's core now. Marcus could see it on his display. The central processor that controlled the entire Void Collective network. Fire everything, he said. The Shadow Strike's remaining weapons discharged in one final salvo. Behind them, thousands of ships added their firepower. The combined assault overwhelmed the station's defenses, punching through layers of armor to strike the core. The Void Station exploded in a cascade of destruction that lit up the entire sector. The shockwave caught the Shadow Strike, tearing the ship apart. Marcus's last thought as his ship died around him was that they had done it. They had proven humanity's worth. They had shown the galaxy what humans could do when pushed to their limits. They had won. Admiral Vasquez stood in the observation gallery of Earth Command, watching the reports come in. The Void Collective's coordinated attacks had collapsed across the galaxy. Individual groups remained, but without their central coordination, they were manageable threats rather than an existential danger. The cost had been high. Hundreds of ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost, and the Phantom Squadron, the brave souls who had started it all, was gone. All ships destroyed, all hands lost, but they had saved the galaxy. Admiral, an aide approached. The Council is asking for you. They want to discuss humanity's new role in galactic defense. Elena nodded, straightening her uniform. The medals on her chest felt heavier now, representing not just human achievement but human sacrifice. As she walked toward the conference room, she thought of Marcus Chen and his crew. They would never know how their sacrifice had changed everything, how humanity was no longer seen as weak or irrelevant, how the galaxy had learned that the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't the biggest gun or the fastest computer. It was a human willing to die for something bigger than themselves. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 species stood in respectful silence as Admiral Elena Vasquez walked to the human podium. Above her, holographic displays showed footage from the final battle, the Shadow Strike's last moments, Commander Marcus Chen's final transmission, the explosion that had ended the Void Collective's threat. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell stood beside Elena, tears streaming down her face. She remembered standing in this same spot 6 months ago, being told that humans were soft-worlders, irrelevant, useful only for mining operations. Now the entire galaxy watched with reverence as Earth's military commander prepared to speak. Emperor Thrax rose from his seat, his forearms held in the Cravathi gesture of highest respect. Admiral Vasquez, before you speak, I must say something on behalf of my people. His voice, which had once dismissed humanity with contempt, now carried the weight of humility. The Cravathi Empire has existed for 10,000 years. In that time, we believed ourselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We were wrong. The Emperor gestured to the holographic displays. Your Phantom Squadron, 8 ships crewed by humans we called reckless and emotional, did what our 30,000 warships could not. They saved my homeworld. They saved my people. And in the final battle, they showed us the true meaning of courage. Other representatives began to speak one after another. The Xinthian Collective admitted their error in dismissing human creativity. The Trell Confederation praised human tactical innovation. Even minor species that had barely acknowledged Earth's existence now spoke of humanity with awe. Elena let them speak. She stood at the podium, her face composed despite the grief that threatened to overwhelm her. When the speeches finally ended, she took a deep breath. The Phantom Squadron was comprised of ordinary humans, she began. They were pilots, engineers, strategists, people who grew up on Earth dreaming of the stars. When they joined the service, they knew they might face danger. They accepted that risk because they believed in something greater than themselves. She paused, looking at each representative in turn. The galaxy underestimated humans. You saw our emotions as weakness. You saw our creativity as chaos. You saw our unpredictability as a flaw. Commander Chen and his people proved that everything you thought was our weakness is actually our greatest strength. Elena pulled up new displays, showing battle footage from across the galaxy. Since adopting human tactical doctrine, Council forces have won 37 engagements with minimal losses. Species that have integrated human training methods report increased effectiveness across all military operations. The methods you once dismissed as madness are now being taught in every military academy in Council space. What you call chaos, we call adaptability. What you call emotion, we call motivation. What you call recklessness, we call courage. Elena's voice grew stronger. Humans don't fight like the Cravathi or the Xinthians or any other species, because we're not trying to copy you. We're trying to win, and we've learned that sometimes the best way to win is to do the unexpected. The Xinthian speaker pulsed with colors that indicated deep thought. Admiral, the Council wishes to formally elevate Earth to Tier 1 status. Your species has earned a place among the galaxy's primary powers, but more than that, we wish to establish the Human Tactical Training Program, where all Council species can learn your methods of warfare. We accept, Elena said, but we also have a request. Name it, Emperor Thrax said immediately. The Phantom Squadron Memorial. Every member of that squadron gave their lives for species that had shown them only contempt. They deserve to be remembered. We want a monument here, at the Council headquarters honoring their sacrifice. Agreed, the Emperor said, but not just a monument. We propose that the highest military honor in Council space be named for Commander Marcus Chen. The Chen Medal for tactical excellence will be awarded to those who show the kind of innovation and courage that defined your Phantom Squadron. Elena felt her throat tighten. It wasn't enough. Nothing could be enough to replace the people they had lost. But it was something. It was recognition that humanity had finally earned its place among the stars. The Council session continued with discussions of humanity's new role. Earth would maintain its own fleet, but human tactical advisors would be embedded with every major Council force. The Human Defense Initiative would receive funding to train mixed-species units in irregular warfare. Earth's ambassador would have voting rights equal to any elder species. Everything had changed. The species that had been dismissed as irrelevant now stood at the center of galactic military strategy. 6 weeks later, a small ceremony took place at the Phantom Squadron Memorial. The monument was simple, a black stone wall listing the names of every person who had died in the squadron's operations, with Marcus Chen's name at the top. Behind it, a holographic display showed the Shadow Strike's final moments on an endless loop. Elena stood before the memorial with the surviving members of the squadron's support staff. Pilots who had trained with Chen, engineers who had worked on the ships, intelligence officers who had planned the missions. They were all here to say goodbye. They were the best of us, Elena said to the small gathering. They proved that humanity deserved respect. They saved the galaxy, and they did it knowing they might not come home. A young lieutenant stepped forward, placing a wreath at the base of the memorial. Admiral, there's something you should know. We've been receiving applications, thousands of them, people who want to join the new Phantom Squadron. Elena looked at him in surprise. New squadron? Yes, ma'am. The council approved it this morning. They want Earth to maintain a permanent irregular warfare unit, trained in the methods Commander Chen pioneered. They're calling it Phantom Squadron in honor of the original. Elena felt a bittersweet pride swell in her chest. The squadron would continue. The legacy would live on. Future generations would learn Marcus Chen's tactics, would carry forward the tradition of creative, unpredictable, devastatingly effective human warfare. Who's commanding it? She asked. Captain Rebecca Rodriguez, ma'am. Elena's head snapped up. Reaper? She's alive? The lieutenant smiled. Yes, ma'am. Apparently she was blown clear when the Shadow Strike exploded. Spent 4 days in a damaged escape pod before a Cravathi rescue ship found her. She's in medical care, but she's expected to make a full recovery. For the first time since the battle, Elena laughed. Of course Reaper had survived. The woman was too stubborn to die. And who better to lead the new squadron than someone who had flown with the original? There's more, the lieutenant continued. Engineer Kamala Singh was found in a different escape pod, and Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka made it to a station before the Shadow Strike was destroyed. Commander Chen had ordered her to transfer critical tactical data. Elena felt tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of joy. Not everyone had been lost. Some had survived to carry the torch forward. What about Commander Chen? She asked, already knowing the answer. The lieutenant's expression sobered. No, ma'am. He stayed on the bridge to the end, made sure everyone else who could evacuate did so. His last transmission was to Reaper, telling her she was in command now. Elena nodded, wiping her eyes. It was exactly what Marcus would have done. He had been a leader to the end, making sure his people survived even if he couldn't. 6 months after that, in a hospital room on Earth, Rebecca Rodriguez sat in a wheelchair, her legs still healing from the injuries sustained during her escape. Around her, Kamala and Yuki stood, along with a dozen new faces, the core of the new Phantom Squadron. Commander Chen taught us that humans don't win by being stronger or faster or more advanced than everyone else, Rebecca said to her new crew. We win by being smarter, by adapting, by doing what others think is impossible. She pulled up a holographic display showing tactical scenarios. You're going to learn everything the original squadron knew. Every tactic, every trick, every crazy maneuver that saved our lives and won battles. But more importantly, you're going to learn how to think like a human warrior, how to see possibilities where others see only obstacles, how to turn weakness into strength. A young pilot raised her hand. Captain, what if we can't live up to the original squadron's legacy? Rebecca smiled, the same predatory grin she had worn in the cockpit of the Shadow Strike. Then we'll make a new legacy. Commander Chen never tried to be like anyone else. He was himself, and that was enough. Be yourself, be human. That's all you need to be. The new squadron nodded, understanding settling over them. They were carrying forward something important, something that had changed the galaxy forever. The burden was heavy, but they were ready for it. Meanwhile, in deep space beyond Council territory, something stirred. A signal that had been traveling for years finally reached its destination. In the darkness between galaxies, vast shapes began to move. Ships that made the Void Collective's fleet look like toys. Entities that had been watching, waiting, studying. The message was simple. Threat detected. Unknown species displays dangerous unpredictability. Recommend immediate containment. But there was a second part to the message added by the Void Collective's final transmission before its destruction. Warning. These humans, they fight differently. They win when they should lose. They are dangerous. The entities processed this information. They had faced countless species across millions of years. None had ever posed a real threat. But these humans, these strange creatures who turned chaos into victory, might be different. They would come. They would assess, and if necessary, they would eliminate the threat. But they didn't know what the Void Collective had learned too late. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their ships or weapons or tactics. It was in their absolute refusal to give up, to back down, to accept defeat. It was in their ability to find hope in hopelessness, to create light in darkness, to stand together when everything said they should fall. The galaxy had underestimated humans once. The Void Collective had made that mistake and paid the price. Now something worse was coming. Something that had never been defeated, never been challenged, never been stopped. But it was about to meet humanity. And humanity, as the galaxy had learned, didn't fight fair. They fought to win. They fought with everything they had. They fought until the enemy broke, or they did, and even then they kept fighting. On Earth, Admiral Vasquez received the first warning signals from deep space observation posts. Unknown vessels, massive and powerful, were heading toward Council space. They would arrive in 1 year. She looked at the report, then at the memorial image of Marcus Chen that sat on her desk. "Well, Commander," she said to the image, "looks like we're going to need your kind of madness again." She pressed a button on her console. "Get me the Phantom Squadron, and tell the Council to prepare. We've got incoming." The galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer underestimated, no longer dismissed, no longer ignored. They were the ones others looked to when the impossible needed to be done. And somewhere in the black, Rebecca Rodriguez smiled as she received her orders. The original Phantom Squadron had shown the galaxy what humans could do. Now it was time for the second generation to prove that the first wasn't a fluke, that humanity's strength wasn't luck or accident, but something fundamental to who they were. The enemy was coming. Let them come. Humanity was ready. They always had been.